Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, Episode 10. Today's podcast is a feature interview with editor and writer Sandra McKenzie on the subject of writing in general and business and resume writing in particular. Near the beginning of the interview with Jenn, you can hear Sandra assert her belief that anyone can write. Really? You mean I need not consign myself to a life of only introducing podcasts? Could I really follow my dreams? Hang on, let me get a piece of paper. It was a dark and stormy night.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Communication Diva. This is Jenn Swanson, sitting here on a rainy February day, which is a good day to talk about writing. And so today my featured guest is Sandra McKenzie, and Sandra has had a long and varied career in the writing industry. She is a freelance writer and has been for about 25 years. She's worked in areas such as school boards, for AIDS, HIV research, and feng shui. She did a lot of work in magazines and specialized in things like interior design, home decor. She worked at Canadian Living and magazine, which is a big magazine here in Canada, and she was the in-house editor and Western Canadian editor for Canadian House and Home, which is actually a magazine that I really enjoy. She said she's worked in just about every North American magazine except Architectural Digest, and then she laughed and she said there was a whole story behind that, but she wouldn't tell me what that was. So we'll have to ask another time. Subsequent to magazine work, Sandra moved into academic writing and editing and did a lot of online work. And she worked at the Simon Fraser University here in the Vancouver area, doing online course editing, and she did that for about 7 years. And to this day, she writes in a magazine called Eat Magazine, which is a food magazine that comes out of Victoria, BC. And she still does consultation work and freelance work, and is very willing if anyone's looking for someone to help them polish their writing style. So without further ado, I will turn you over to my interview earlier today with Sandra McKenzie. Hi, everybody. This is Jenn Swanson, and welcome back to Communication Diva. And I have my featured guest here today with me, Sandra McKenzie. Welcome, Sandra.
Hello, Jenn. How are you?
I'm doing really well today, thanks. I've had a delicious, what do you call these again?
Gauchère.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but they were delicious, and the coffee was really good too. So we're sitting in Sandra's kitchen here, and we're going to talk today about writing and about business writing and about resume writing and probably a few other things as well. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Sandra, is how you got into writing in the first place.
Well, Jenn, it started in about grade 8. And my allowance wasn't quite up to my standards. So I started selling essays to school friends. And I could write essays on anything. It just sort of came out of the blue. So it was a bit subversive. I didn't realize at the time that would be technically cheating. And it was reasonably lucrative. And it just went on from there.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. Good. And so that led you to did you study writing?
No, I didn't actually. It's just something that I've always done. My mother claims that I was born with a book in my hand, and words just seem to come naturally, at least on paper.
Wow, that's great. And you've had a long, we've mentioned a little bit of it in the intro, but you've had a long career in doing writing and doing editing. And for those of us who aren't exactly clear, I mean, I took a course way back when at SFU on editing and never did anything with it. But for those of us who aren't clear on what editing is, can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. The editor is your ultimate word nerd. When it comes to words, she's the picky perfectionist. She's the first reader, and if she knows what she's doing, she reads through very critically, and she'll ask the embarrassing questions. She'll find the stupid little mistakes, and essentially help you prepare whatever it is you're writing so that you can send it out into the world, and you won't look like a fool.
Great. And do you put any of yourself into that to polish it at all?
Oh, it depends on what kind of editing. There are several levels of editing, but mostly I think it's very important to preserve the integrity of the writer's voice. So I try not to change your style, unless your style happens to be really, really awful. In that case, I'll take some liberties. But no, mostly I try to preserve your words, just put them in the correct order.
That's great. That's great. It must be fun to do all different genres of writing as well. And I think you've said you've done magazines and you've done all different things. Have you ever done novels?
No. No, I come from the school of thought that says only a dunderhead writes for anything but money. Novelists don't typically get rich. Neither do editors, but at least editors can often make the rent.
Right. That's true. That's true. And you started this whole thing off as an entrepreneur, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So one of the things that you said to me earlier before we turned the recorder on was that you believe that anybody can write. Do you want to say more about that?
Yes, I think there's a real mystique around writing. People tend to be intimidated by it, and why shouldn't they be? I mean, what you're doing when you write is you're putting down what you think or what you know on paper, and you're sending it out into the world to be judged. And people think that must be terribly difficult. Well, it isn't. Anybody can write. If you can talk, you can write. You might not be Shakespeare, you might not be Charles Dickens, but you can do it. You just have to keep a few simple things in mind.
Yeah, that's okay. That's quite all right. That's quite all right. Yeah, you have to keep some things in mind, and one of the things that I see that you say on this style guide that I'm looking at that you worked on was that you need to keep it simple.
Yes, keep it simple, keep it active, and keep it engaging. Now, what do we mean by that? Keep it simple. Write the way you speak. Use common, everyday words. When people sit down to write something, they think they have to put everything they know into the first sentence. Well, you don't. All you want to do with that first sentence is get somebody to read the second sentence, and so on. I sort of really like to emphasize this business about keeping it simple. Use everyday language. Don't try to write like an academic. First of all, nobody actually reads academics. And secondly, if they do read the academics, they don't know what the heck they're saying. What it boils down to is what I like to see in a piece of writing is that it would be understandable to an intelligent, interested 12-year-old, but it wouldn't insult the 42-year-old subject specialist. And people say, oh, well, that can't be done. To which I like to answer, does the name Harry Potter mean anything to you? That's a classic example of something that is accessible to kids. Kids love it. Adults love it. I was introduced to Harry Potter by a 60-year-old engineer.
Wow.
So.
Wow. I've read every single one and couldn't wait till the next one came out. And I was amazed at exactly that I was arguing with the 12-year-old in the house about who got to read the next book first, because they were engaging and they were not dumbed down.
That's right. It's, a perfect example of how to write for everybody in your audience.
Yeah. So are there different levels of when you're writing, or if you're thinking about a wide audience like that, are you writing with different levels in mind of people's ability to read and understand, or are you just trying to sort of hit the medium?
Oh, I'm not sure hitting the medium is really what I would be after. If you understand what you've written, then other people should understand it as well. Now, obviously, if you're writing in a specialized field, then there's a jargon, there's a language that you're going to use, and go ahead and use it. It would be dumb not to. But if you're writing for a wider audience and you're writing about a specialized subject, then try to use the language that you have to use, but when you can, explain it to your wider audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I was just thinking if you were writing for a specific audience, then you might go into their, write for them
Oh, of course.
in their language.
Oh, of course. And, use the language that's appropriate to the subject that you're writing about. Right. But do try to keep it active. Avoid the passive voice if you can. I always think that there should be a special license for using the passive voice, and it should be harder to get than a license to practice medicine.
Yeah. All right, then we know your feelings on that subject. So what are some tips? You've got keep it active, and by that, do you want to explain that just a little bit more, maybe?
Which one? Keeping it active?
Yeah.
Sure. Avoid using the passive voice, I've said. For example, here's one example. Your efficiency will be impacted by your choice of software. Now, what does that mean? It means software affects efficiency. So why not just say that? If you're writing a highly technical or an academic paper, then often you do have to use the active voice because or the passive voice rather, because you have to keep your information impartial. And the passive voice is useful for that. I just used it. So there you go. Now, how to get away from the passive voice in the narrative that surrounds your technical information. Use action verbs. For example, you could say distance education delivers classroom lectures to learners everywhere, rather than distance education is a way for learners to receive education.
Right. So it sounds like just words that move you forward and that are easier to understand.
Yes. Use verbs that actually describe what you're talking about.
Have you noticed I've noticed that words that never used to be verbs are now being used as verbs. And sometimes that drives me nuts. And I wonder, as an editor, how do you feel about that?
This is a subject of much discussion. I have a particular bias against using the word impact as a verb. To me, an impact is when two things collide, or when you have an impacted wisdom tooth. You can use the word effect, and that's a good, honest word. Now, this is a bit controversial because technically impact can be used as a verb. And the English language does evolve, and new words come into use, and they become accepted. So, yes, I have my biases, and if I'm editing you, I will strike out the word impact if you use it as a verb. But if I'm not editing you and you strongly feel the need to use the verb or the word impact, go ahead, do it.
Yeah. I know. I have some pet peeves as well, and I think I actually wrote a blog post about words that I can't stand, that are overused, and it's funny because now it's common use to say, "Let me Google that."
Yes, actually, I do that too. And I do think Google deserves to be a verb.
There you go. Some words merit more than others. Hey. Yeah. So, for somebody who needs some writing tips or style tips, what kinds of things do you have to suggest?
Do you mean books, websites, that sort of thing?
Well, no, actually, I was just thinking of some rules for writing maybe before we get to that. And I know you wanted to talk a bit about resume writing as well. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. Let me find.
No problem. We're looking at some notes here.
Yeah.
Just you've got some things here about specific styles, how to get your grammar right, that kind of thing.
Right.
Apostrophes, those are sometimes I find challenging. I use a lot of commas and a lot of dot. Probably things I shouldn't. There's probably a word for that too. Things I shouldn't.
An ellipsis.
Yes, that's right. That's the word. The ellipsis, and I use that way too frequently.
Yes, and I use the exclamation marks much too often. You're only supposed to, you get a lifetime allotment, I think, of 10 exclamation marks.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and I go through that in a paragraph. There are lots and lots of style guides out there that can help you get it right. A quick summary, apostrophes. Yes. This is one that drives editors absolutely mad. The apostrophe does a couple of things. It indicates ownership. Mm-hmm. For example, you talk about Jen's red car. Mm-hmm. That's Jenn with an apostrophe S. Or you can replace a letter in a contraction. For example, there's Jen's red car in the wrong parking spot. Mm-hmm. Or it can replace a missing numeral. For example, Jenn bought a red car sometime in the 90s. Right. So that's simple. So how do people go so wrong? I don't know why.
It could just be not knowing the rules, I think, because I think sometimes we miss that when we're in grammar school. In elementary school, we miss, learning those rules. And if we don't learn the rules, then we're going by our mistakes all the way the rest of the time.
Well, a short rant on that. I learned the rules of grammar in grade school. I was taught by nuns. And I think by about grade 5, I knew the basic rules of grammar. Mm-hmm. It's now almost impossible for me to misuse who or whom, mm-hmm. because the nuns rapped you sharply on the knuckles.
Yeah.
And that's missing from the education system. And I think that's a shame. Grammar and punctuation are essentially the rules of the road, mm-hmm. for the language. It's how we agree to make our ideas and our thoughts understandable to each other. Mm-hmm. We use the conventions of language. Mm-hmm. It prevents the verbal equivalent of the 5-car pileup on the on-ramp. And I think it's very important that we go back to respecting grammar and respecting punctuation, and spelling correctly. Yeah. I think if I see straight spelt ST8 one more time, I am just going to lose it.
That's a new one to me. I haven't seen that one. Spelling mistakes drive me nuts too. And I mean, I make them, of course, but I'm pretty picky about that in my classroom with my medical terminology students. And, if it's spelled wrong, it's marked wrong because you might be talking about a completely different body part or a different medication, because some of these things are one letter apart. So I get a bit tyrannical with that.
Absolutely. And if you're using a computer to write anymore, and everybody does, I can't remember the last time I saw a typewriter, spell check should make this so much easier. Now, spell check is not infallible. Mm-hmm. It can't tell the difference between the number 2 and 2, as in I'm talking to somebody, mm-hmm. or 2 as in, in addition to. Mm-hmm. But it does a pretty darn good job of catching the major errors. Mm-hmm. And if you reread what you've written before you hit the send button, you can usually pick out, the most embarrassing mistakes.
And then go back and fix them again if you have hit publish. Yes, I've done that a few times. That's good, is proofreading and taking a look at what you've written before you put it out there. What about resume writing? Do you have some tips on that for people?
Oh God, yes. First of all, first tip is make sure you're actually qualified for the job that you're applying for. I've seen resumes from people. I don't know what they thought they were applying for, to tell you the truth. Make sure that you have presented your information correctly and professionally, preferably with a good printer. Write it up on a computer, proofread, then proofread again, and they get somebody else to proofread it for you. And then print out your resume on a decent printer with a good cartridge. There's nothing worse than getting an illegible. Oh. I've seen resumes. I've actually had resumes come to me that were written in pencil. Give me a break. Give me a break.
What do you think about the resume templates that you can get in some of the word processing and, some of the word templates?
I think they're fine if your qualifications and your information matches the template. I've tried myself to work with those templates, and if there's anything sort of offbeat about your information, they don't work. Again, with resumes, I think it's really important to keep it as simple as possible. Keep it clean and keep all of the information relevant. I mean, nobody needs to know or is interested in whether you were in Cub Scouts when you were in grade 4. That's not relevant. And you can scrap that. Remember that the people that you're sending your resume to are really busy, and they're going to get probably, maybe 100 resumes. So they're not going to be able to give yours more time than, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes at most. So make sure you tell them what you have to tell them right up front, and keep it as simple and as direct as possible so that they can just glance at it and say, yes, this guy looks like a possibility. Let's put him over in the maybe file.
So I've heard before that you should try and keep your resume to one page. And I know depending on the job that I'm applying for, sometimes that's really hard because if you're going through the basic bits that I think need to be included, your education, your experience, your hobbies, your interests, your contact information, all of that, I've found that I end up taking at least 2 pages, and I heard somewhere once upon a time that you should always keep it to one, and I don't know, is that practical?
I don't know if it's practical or not. I'm a fan of the one-page resume. First of all, I think your cover letter should really cover most of the bases. Your cover letter is what should really grab your the employer's attention. That's critical. And then your resume is just kind of a quick overview of who you are and where you've been. Now, if you've got way more detail than a one-page resume is going to accommodate, you can do 2 things. You can do a 2-page resume. There's no hard and fast law against it. Or you can say at the very end of your resume, for further details, please contact me for further details, or further details and references available on request. And then have an expanded resume ready to send out. That's one way of handling it. Or just go ahead and do a 2-page resume. I'd stay away from the 3- and 5-page resumes. Nobody's got time to read those.
No, that would be tedious and not, and stuff that's important and crucial would get lost, I would think, in that many pages.
Well, you're not really focusing on what's critical. In that case, if you're sending out a 5-page resume, you're sending out your autobiography.
And your memoirs.
Yeah. And that's not what's being asked for. Really, you just should include the really pertinent information for that job.
Right. So is that part of some of what you do sometimes, is help people do resumes?
I have helped people do resumes. I've read far more resumes than I've helped produce. And I'm not sure which is more painful, to tell you the truth.
Exactly. And sometimes people put things on their resumes that really are stretching the truth.
Yes. And I think I've read someplace that 80% of the people fudge their resumes. I think that's a big mistake. And it's a big mistake for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you fudge your resume and you get the job, but you don't know what you're doing, it's kind of an embarrassing position to be in.
Yeah.
And the second thing is it's actually a fairly small world. And if you fudge your resume and say, I achieved my PhD in blah, blah, blah from, the university of this and that, somebody you're working with is going to say, oh, do you remember old Professor Jones? And what he used to always say. And you're going to scratch your head and say, oh, yeah, I remember him. What was it he always said? And you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
You're going to get found out at some point or another, or you're going to live in terror of getting found out. So keep your resume straightforward. Keep it honest.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to, blow your own horn. And, okay, you can maybe, I don't want to say you can fudge it, but just, present yourself in the best possible light, but don't out and out lie.
Yeah. Yeah, I have sometimes in one of the courses that I teach, I had students write resumes and I've looked at them, and sometimes they just want me to look over their resumes before they go out to their clinical in the hospitals. And I got a little tired of hearing over and over and over again, I am an excellent communicator. And then, farther down the page, the grammar's wrong or the spelling's wrong or whatever.
Yeah. If you're actually an excellent communicator, you don't have to tell anybody that you are. They'll notice it right away. I promise you that.
Yeah, exactly. So, there were all these wonderful claims about how fabulous the person was. And lots of times they were, but it almost seemed a little bit over the top in some cases.
Yes.
A little too spectacular on the page.
Yeah. Keep your resume believable.
Yeah. A little humility there too. Good. So what about, one of the things I wanted to mention that I noticed the other day in the podcast world, and I think it is available on the Stitcher Smart Radio app, is Grammar Girl. There's a podcast out there that's very short. It's about 5 minutes long, yes. And it's called Grammar Girl. Do you know this one?
Yeah, I don't know the podcast, but I do know the website, and I endorse it with great enthusiasm. Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, I've only listened to 2 or 3 now that I have it in my favorite radio stations on my iPhone. But it's really, I learned something every time I listen to her.
Yeah, actually, I was just thinking about that this morning. When you get 2 or 3 editors together in a room. You get word nerds. We argue about the strangest damn things. And Grammar Girl is often a site that we'll go to for kind of the definitive word on an issue.
Great. Well, I'll put a link to her website then on the show notes for this at www.communicationdiva.com, and then you can check out Grammar Girl too, because I just discovered it recently and I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, there are some other websites. Would you like me to mention a few?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
For people who really love words and really love playing with them, one of the best websites ever, in my opinion, is the ThinkMap Visual Thesaurus. Mm-hmm. And it's a subscription-only service, unfortunately. But I think you get to play around with it before you subscribe. So you can go to it and just plug in a word. And what happens is you get this animation that shows all of the various synonyms for the word.
Oh, wow.
And then you can click on one of the synonyms and you get this other animation that shows all the synonyms for the synonym. And it just goes on ad infinitum. It's great fun. Highly recommend it. Worldwide Words is another website that I've been addicted to, since there was a World Wide Web. It's run by a guy named Michael Quinion, and what he does is he tracks down phrases. For example, if you've ever wondered where the word boondoggle comes from, you can check his site, and I'll bet he has found out where the word boondoggle comes from, and has a wonderful little essay that's very witty and fun to read that explains exactly how that word came into the English language. So there you go. And then if you're a real word nerd, if you're really dedicated to words, there's the Subversive Copy Editor. And this is, there's also a book called The Subversive Copy Editor. It's the same person, Carol Fisher-Soller, and she works with the Chicago Manual of Style.
Oh, yeah.
And that is sort of the Bible for, grammar, all issues of style, grammar, punctuation, anything. And she's very funny and very witty. And she really gives you the lowdown on what's up and coming in copy editing.
There you go. Well, that sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds great. The Chicago Manual of Style, I know when I'm there's that I have had to use in my papers that I'm writing at university, and the other one is Turabian style. Which is, I think it's very similar to the Chicago Manual, but it's a different book, I guess. But I think as long as you stick to one when you're writing, then
pretty much. Now, Chicago is the granddaddy of all style guides. If you're in academics, then you probably use the American Psychological Association, the APA style guide. And the differences are, to my eye, are kind of minute and probably not all that relevant to most people. Personally, I think if you're looking for a good style guide and a good grammar guide, it's pretty hard to beat the old classic William Strunk and E.B. White Elements of Style. It's small, it's a cheap little paperback. You can read it from cover to cover in an evening, and it tells you everything you absolutely have to know about how to put words together.
Great. So that's called The Elements of Style, and I will definitely put that on the website as well. That sounds like something I could get too.
Everybody should have it. And everybody who writes anything should have it and read it at least once a year.
Oh, wow.
It's a delight.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And you've got a few other books here too. Are there any others you want to talk about?
Yes. The Little Brown Essential Handbook for Writers. Okay. It's a good little Canadian style guide, and it goes into some detail on issues like plagiarism and copyright infringement and all those things that sound pretty complicated. And when you get into law, they are very complicated. But in terms of your writing, it's very, very simple. Don't steal the words that somebody else wrote. That's basically what it boils down to. Write your own damn words.
I had a terrible experience about, I guess it was about a year ago, with a student who I knew face-to-face did not speak as well as the paper that she presented. And it was not a difficult paper. It wasn't a research paper. It was a paper about communication. And it was, I was reading this, and the terminology she was using and the words she was using were far beyond what I thought she was capable of. And so I decided to try and see what was going on here. And I put into Google a paragraph, and up popped an entire essay written by someone else. And after further investigation, I figured out that about 75% of the paper she had turned in was not hers, and she didn't attribute anything to anybody. And sadly, I mean, it went right through the department head and to the dean, and in the end, she did not pass the course, which was unfortunate. But she was not aware of plagiarism, and I thought, wait a minute. I mean, at least you should know about that when you get through high school. I mean, these are college-age students, right?
Absolutely. And I understand it's a huge problem. I know that there are websites that actually sell pre-written essays. And I've read a few of these essays, and they're not good. Aside from the fact that the student is not learning the material, which presumably is why he or she is sitting in a classroom in the first place, they're paying good money, and these are not cheap essays, for something that's incompetent. Right. I mean, why would you do that?
Well, there are actually websites that you can buy blog articles from as well. I just heard about that not that long ago, and yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, I think, to be doing that.
It kind of defeats the whole purpose. I don't get it.
Yeah, I don't really either. So write your own stuff, people. You have another book, or we've got one more?
Yeah, I've got The Subversive Copy Editor.
Oh, okay. Same as the website?
Same as the website, and it's just full of all kinds of hints about how to get into editing if you're interested in doing that.
Okay.
But more importantly, for most people, it's full of hints about how to use Microsoft Word more effectively, and how to write more effectively. It's a good little book. Again, it's an inexpensive paperback. And if you're serious about learning how to write better, it's a good one to pick up. One book that I think is indispensable, and it's so indispensable I lent out my copy and I've never gotten it back, so I have to order another one, is called On Writing Well by William Zinsser.
I've heard of it.
And it's just a beautiful book.
Okay.
It's a beautifully, beautifully written book, as the title would suggest. And it's very, very inspiring. It talks to you about how to think about words and how to respect them, which I think is basically what it boils down to. If you respect the language and if you respect the person that you're talking to when you're writing your talking, then yes, you will become a better writer. So, On Writing Well by William Zinsser. Everybody should have a copy of it, and I will be ordering another one from Amazon today.
Excellent. Well, I'll put a link to that, and maybe I'll order it myself. I have heard of that. That's great. Good. So, is there anything else to do with writing that you wanted to share with the dear listeners before we finish up?
Sort of a general thought, and it goes back to writing simply. I truly, truly believe in that. And when you write something simply, when you use everyday words, essentially what you're saying to the reader is, look, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about so thoroughly that I can explain it to you without getting bogged down in jargon or without trying to baffle you with bullshit.
Yeah.
And I respect your time. You don't have a lot of time. Yeah. You want to be able to grasp what I have to say as quickly as possible. Here it is.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's really refreshing. I remember sitting in a lecture with a professor, and I understood. And I'm taking courses, and I don't think I'm that, brain dead, but I understood maybe every third word that she spoke because she was using so many academic words and concepts that it was almost unintelligible. And I hardly got what I think I could have gotten out of the lecture had she just used, regular words instead of these great big long technical terms.
Yes. I wouldn't accuse her of lying, but it's what my dad used to call baffling with bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you just spoke with her one-on-one, she was lovely and brilliant and smart. And I thought, why can't you just talk like this when you're in front of a microphone, rather than sounding like she was writing a textbook?
Yeah. Because somewhere she learned that in order to impress other people, she had to confuse them.
Yeah.
Can I take just a minute? You can edit this out. I want to look for something in Elements of Style.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh,
no
I know what it is. I think it's Rule 17.
Oh, Rule 17. Okay.
Avoid obfuscation.
Okay, now tell us what that means.
It means be simple,
Right.
be clear.
Right. Simple and clear writing. Yeah. Excellent. That's Rule 17 in the style guide.
Rule 17.
She's looking it up. That's great. Good. Now, I want to tell you also that Sandra has a blog, and I'll link to that on the website as well. And this is about her other passion, which is food. And the blog is called intrepidappetite.com. And I know, because I've been the recipient of many yummy things, that that you also have a passion for food. And did you ever write about food, or do you?
Yes, I'm now semi-retired. I've retired officially from editing academic papers. Thank God. So that gives me the time and leisure to pursue my other passion, which is food. And I write articles these days for Eat magazine, which is published out of Victoria. Primarily, I don't do recipes, and I don't do restaurant critiques. I try to focus on the social and economic aspects of food, the cultural aspects of food. What do we eat? Where do we eat it? Who do we eat it with? And why? Why is it fun? And so that's great. It gives me a nice tax write-off for indulging what I really love doing.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic to be able to do what you love to do and share it with other people. And if people can find you there at that blog site, and your business name is Right Now. That's Right with a W. Right Now Communications. And if people wanted to contact you directly, where else could they find you? Your email.
Yes, you can email me at smckenzie, and that's MCKENZI1 at shaw.ca. And I'm open for consultations for editing and freelance writing.
Fabulous. Excellent. Okay, so that is, I'll put all of those things again on the website at communicationdiva.com on the show notes for this episode, which is going to be episode number 10. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for taking this time this morning, and for sharing information and wisdom about how to write.
I just love sharing the word. Keep it simple.
There you go. Thank you very much. That was Sandra McKenzie, and this is Jenn Swanson, and I'll talk to you next time.